Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy that we have an opportunity to meet again at Brussels Talks. My name is Ewa Kocińska-Lange, and I have the privilege to run the NCBR, National Center for Research and Development office in Brussels, run together with Business and Science Poland. And as some of you may know, this is a series of events called Brussels Talks that we organized for some time already. Today we are meeting with Mr. Mikołaj Dobkiewicz, who's the Director General and Permanent Representative of the European Investment Bank office in Brussels. Welcome. We are very happy that you agreed to join us today to discuss the ambitions of the European Investment Bank and the plans that are addressing global challenges. This is a very current topic here in Brussels, and we are very happy that we have the opportunity to talk to you about that, and also to talk a bit about the R&I, research innovation dimension of activities run by the bank. But before we will go into that, I will just tell you to participants a few details about the technicalities. I imagine that some of you know Click Meeting platform, but for those who are not very familiar with it, just a small information to contact with us. Please use the chat. That's the possibility to interact with us. And we are very happy always when you ask questions. So please ask questions all the time, and I will look into them and put them on the screen so our guests could answer. That's also the purpose of the event, to give you the possibility to ask directly questions to our distinguished guest. And also, if you have some technical issues, also use the chat, please, for that, and we will try to help you as fast as we can. We are not having any slides today, so this will be just a talk with you and with us in general. So that's just in case you have some questions about some materials. And I think that's it. These are the most important issues from technical point of view. So I would say that we can now start the event officially. So once again, I'm very happy that you joined us, Mr. Dobkiewicz, that you're with us and you're willing to talk about the plans of the EIB. And as an introductory, very, very general question, I would like to ask you, what are the main areas currently that EIB is working on? And we hear from time to time, recently quite often, that European Investment Bank is the EU Climate Bank. So it would be great if you could tell us a bit more what is exactly the meaning of it, and what are your relations with this big EU plan called European Green Deal. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. It's a very nice occasion to be able to take part in this discussion. I think perhaps I would say a few words at the beginning, first of all, about the EIB in general, and I apologize to those who know it already, but I think it's essential to set a certain framework for the type, when we discuss this type of institution. Secondly, I'll give you some key figures about the EIB, and then I'll say a few words about specifically about our work on climate and innovation. Of course, these climate innovation are pretty vast topics, so obviously I'm neither trying to pretend to be an expert on those, nor trying to cover all the possible aspects. But of course, we can come back to some of those aspects during the Q&A. Perhaps I should say simply that the EIB is a very old institution. It was originally housed in Brussels. When it was established back in 1958, it was first established in Brussels, and then it moved to Luxembourg in the early 1960s. it has a double nature because it is an EU institution or EU treaty-based agency, but also at the same time, it's obviously it's a financial institution which contributes to developing sustainable projects globally. And when I say globally, it's truly global because we have projects in almost 135 countries. The business model you could describe in a very simple way. We borrow on the financial markets at very attractive rates because we have the highest possible rating, which is AAA. And so leveraging on this rating, we were able to offer very attractive conditions to on-lend to our beneficiaries. And of course, we offer them not just attractive financing conditions or the let's say simply the interest rates to put it simply, but also longer tenors, which is very important, very attractive for many bodies or many situations for countries, for example, which are less developed than EU member states. So basically, we're not spending any EU taxpayers' money, but we find this money on the capital market. So whatever we do has to make economic sense, which of course is somehow a distinguishing factor. Now, we have, of course, over the years also developed different products which are based on or leverage on EU financial resources because we are EU bank, we are owned by the EU member states exclusively. There's no other country in the world that has any impact or any influence on our decision-making process, which is also very special. This is the only IFI where you have exclusively EU members as shareholders. Except of course for some smaller institutions like Nordic Investment Bank, where you have several member states of the EU. But then also there's a little exception because there's Iceland as well, which is obviously not a member. So anyway, so our role is essentially to support different EU policies, different European positions, to finance projects, to help public sector, but also private sector, to crowd in private capital, to address different investment gaps or market failures. So when I say to mobilize private capital, it means basically that you cannot finance everything 100%. Our role is very much often to signal that a certain investment is a good type of investment, and that through our participation we can attract other market players, basically private capital that can come in and help finance 100% of each project. So we act as a sort of catalyst. We have a group structure, except for the EIB, so the bank. We also have the European Investment Fund, the EIF. The EIF deploys mandates based on the EU budget, the mandates also from the member states and third parties. It is essentially financing sustainable equity investments and guarantee operations, especially to help access to finance for SMEs. EIF is also very important in terms of financing small innovative ventures and in promotion of venture capital funds. I would also mention here that since 1st of January this year, we have a new member of our family, which is called EIB Global. That's our development branch, which is to finance projects across the world in different geographies. And of course, this is a new baby, but it has a lot on its plate already, and the level of activity is pretty high. I'm happy to say more about that if there is, of course, interest. I would mention that, of course, in normal market conditions, we can try to address well-identified market failures. So, for example, if in a certain sector there's not enough investment because it seems that investors are not interested. The EIB can come in and help. Let's give an example. 5 years ago, there was not so much interest in financing public electric car charging infrastructure. So the EIB has been trying to help with some financing to try to make this market move a bit. And of course, this is the situation since then has changed, and now you can find the type of resources you need for this type of investments much easier. But of course, in bad weather conditions, the EIB has to act counter-cyclically. So it has to, in a situation like COVID crisis or a financial crisis 10 years ago, we basically try to help the EU to cope with unexpected shocks, to finance to finance needs which are related to the effects of the crisis. And of course, this is, for example, at the moment being done in the current situation through the so-called European Guarantee Fund, which is providing liquidity to the European corporates. When we look at the numbers for the EIB, 2021 was a kind of record year. We had about 95 billion of new signed operations. And out of this, EIB, so the bank signed about 64 billion, and the EIF about 30 billion, slightly above 30 billion. Now, I would not give you too many figures at the moment, but I would just mention, let's say, the four big headings of our financing. As it stands at the moment, when you look at 2021 and 2019. So number one is sustainable regions and cities. So that is about an annual lending volume of about 15 billion. That is very much also linked to cohesion policy. Cohesion policy is traditionally our big objective. The position number one is sustainable energy and natural resources. And on average, that gives us an annual figure of 13 billion. Then innovation, digital and human capacity, representing on average a lending volume of around 17 billion. And then finally, SMEs and mid-caps finance with around 17.5 billion, both in 2020 and 2019. So, of course, we also have targets specifically on climate action and environmental sustainability. And we also have targets on economic and social cohesion, because this is, of course, very of high political interest to the decision makers in the union. So those targets are also to be achieved every year by bank. And I'll say a word about the especially climate targets a bit later. Now, I don't want to extend too much this introduction, but of course, maybe first on a few words on innovation. I'm not going to give you the full, let's say, picture of where we stand with innovation and how the financial institutions can address the different deficits and gaps in innovation financing. But it is clear that Europe has been lagging behind basically since 1990s in innovation financing, and it has had a negative effect on our productivity growth. It has also been visible that economic convergence, so convergence between different regions, has slowed down rather than the other way around. And innovation is, of course, suffering, especially in those regions which lag behind. So basically, instead of reducing the gap, we are actually increasing the gap, and this is visible through the COVID crisis quite clearly. We, of course, have a number of very innovative European regional clusters which play host to world-class research and highly innovative global companies. But we also have regions in the European Union which are far behind, and there's no way they can easily bridge the gap to let's say, a market average. And of course, the famous saying about the valley of death between the development of technology and then market deployment and adoption. And of course, this valley of death is especially something very much applicable in Europe, and that is mostly due to the lack of deep risk capital markets in Europe, which is probably the main reason for that. Now, without going too much detail, of course, we have to try to overcome somehow those deficits. I mean, there's so much talk recently about strategic autonomy. We all know very well the reasons why it is so. We, of course, have in a number of technological areas, we have actually quite a strong position in telecoms, robotics, or synthetic biology. The technical revolution is in full swing. Artificial intelligence, cloud computing, 5G, or soon 6G, and the Internet of Things will lead, obviously, to further technological leaps in the coming years. So if we invest now, those technologies will help us to improve our economic position for the European Union, and will also play a very big role in the energy and climate transition, which is agreed to be achieved by 2050. Now, when it comes to figures, our investment survey that we do annually estimates that the gap, the annual investment gap in Europe for innovation and digitalization is around 255 billion. Actually, when you compare it with the gap for financing climate action and sustainability, it's about 360 billion. So there is quite a long way to go if you look at just the numbers. But I think it's clear that if you just look at the energy sector, it already accounts for 200 billion annually. So if you come from Poland, that is not really surprising if you see how big investment needs you have, for example, in different energy-related sectors. And obviously, needless to say, a public sector cannot do it alone. So again, you need catalysts, you need institutions who can act as catalysts, attract financiers, financial institutions, investors, because you need to find the private capital to finance the required leap or advancement. Okay. Now, perhaps I would stop. Maybe I'll say a word a bit about the future, what we intend to do with supporting the innovation. Maybe I leave that to a bit later, and just I finish very quickly a few words on climate, because I think this requires also a bit of attention. So over the last 8 years, we have provided over 200 billion of finance, which supported almost 700 billion of investments in project and environment to reduce emissions and help countries to adapt to climate change. So if you look at share of our activities, it has been increasing from 25% in 2014 to 37% in 2020. And of course, I don't want to give you the figure because it's still a secret for 2021, but it will be announced in 10 days' time in Brussels, and that figure is quite impressive. But I just want to recall that we have committed that by 2025 we would do 50% of our operations would be for climate protection and environmental sustainability. Now, what we have been doing has been also to be the pioneer in the so-called green bonds. We issued the first green bonds in 2007, and we have promoted them, and we have promoted standards. And the idea, we have issued close to 50 billion of green and sustainability bonds in 21 currencies. If I also correct well, we also issued them in zloty quite recently. In 2020, we agreed a so-called climate bank roadmap. So the roadmap is basically to back the ambitions of the European Green Deal and to make Europe carbon neutral. is basically for the moment, the roadmap is a 5-year plan to ensure that all our investments are in line with the conditions of the Paris Climate Agreement. We are the first multilateral development bank to be Paris aligned. And since beginning of last year, 21, all our operations are aligned with the goals and principles of the Paris Agreement. So that has been done quite quickly. We have committed very early to be also aligned with the taxonomy, with the EU taxonomy. We have committed to comply with on the 1st of January this year. Of course, this has been some delay here with the taxonomy discussion. So we have to adapt slightly our work on that, but essentially this is more or less on track. And at the moment, I would just flag up that we also made a pledge in the last COP meeting in Glasgow to help clients, to help them align with the goals of Paris Agreement. And we have also presented our first adaptation plan. So not just for, so this is also important for many countries and clients all over the world to support vulnerable communities globally who struggle with the effects of climate change. And we are also finalizing our proposal for the just transition, which will only provide not just financing, but also advisory and technical assistance, also for the different regions to help them make this concept of just transition tangible and implementable. I think what is very important to mention here, and I'll stop here, basically it's my last short point, is the link between climate and innovation. Because if on the one hand we are leaders in green technologies, we still are, we have not been taken over by the Chinese or anybody else here. And at the same time, we are the most ambitious, let's say, organization or regional power that has ambitions for climate action globally. We have to use all the means to work those technologies, help us achieve our climate objectives. Without new technologies, we are not going to achieve our climate objectives, full period. We are not going to do it with the current energy resources, energy storage resources. We are not going to be able to go through a necessary revolution in every aspect of life that is required here by 2050. So this aspect, the combination of how we can use our innovative capacity and financing available to go with that, to make the sustainability goals come alive. This is probably the biggest headache or the biggest challenge for the years to come in those areas that we have been discussing. Sorry for making this a bit too long in the beginning, but I think we can also come back to some other points later.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I don't think it was too long. I think it was very necessary, especially when we take into consideration the vast portfolio of different EIB activities and also plans related to that. So thanks a lot. And okay, indeed, you mentioned a lot of different issues, so it's actually very tempting to come back to quite some of them. But let's maybe first talk a bit more. Maybe you could give us some practical examples of projects funded recently or invested by EIB recently, and in fields related with climate and innovation. Some examples, like for some of our participants, I think it would be good to have the kind of image of the scale or potential they might have of what kind of projects that you might be interested in. If you could give us like 1-2 examples, let's say related with climate, that would be great.
Yeah, well, one project that just comes to my mind is floating wind farms in Portugal. The challenge was here that basically you needed, basically to get the maximum operational capacity or activity of those wind farms, you have to put them deep into the sea. But then they could not be because there's more wind. But then you could not attach them to the seabed. So they had to float, and there was a technology that was developed to do that, and it's very innovative and it worked. So this is a type of project that we have financed recently. But if you look at some of the things we do, for example, with the partnership that we have with Breakthrough Energy, the fund created by Bill Gates. I mean, I could just give you 4 examples of what we are going to do with them, and I think they serve perfectly the purpose of explaining what type of things we are talking about. So one of them is green hydrogen, which of course has a big importance also if you look at possibilities of how you can use the existing infrastructure that you use also for gas, how to green this type of infrastructure, and how potentially you could use it in the future for hydrogen. But then again, the challenge is how this hydrogen can be green, which is of course a bit of it's a bit of a headache, but of course it's something which would be indeed a big breakthrough. And then second point, sustainable aviation fuels. So you know that aviation is a big source of pollution, and obviously if I think it's self-explanatory. I don't need to explain, but it would make a huge difference, obviously, to have this type of revolution. Then there is a question of energy storage. So how to make make it possible to store energy for long term, especially to make sure that you can store the green energy, which would be a change when compared with the current model, where you have to basically this energy sort of has to circulate in the network, in the grid quickly, and you cannot really store it. And then there is also, I think, a few. No, I think I stop here. I had. I think that's. I would also maybe just say that, of course, there is, for example, a new project that we just financed it's called vertical farming, I think, where basically the question was how to find. It was EIF, not the bank, but the EIF. It was a question of how to finance this type of vertical farming, which is very much in fashion these days. But the company that would develop a kind of a model of standard vertical farming facilities, and here the question was really how to finance investors, how to enhance the opportunities for investors to join this project. And so a stable investor like the EIF was needed to attract others.
Okay, thank you. That gives a bit of a bigger picture indeed on what kind of projects are you interested in as a bank. And since you touched upon the thing I wanted to ask anyway, I will allow myself to give this question now, and then I will immediately go to the chat because we have questions there already appearing. So my question would be to this famous EU Catalyst partnership that you mentioned, partnership between European Commission, your bank, and this Breakthrough Energy Catalyst that's indeed linked with Bill Gates. So we have quite some partnerships in Horizon Europe as a program between member states, between private partners, public partners from different countries, and also the European Commission. And this one is coming a bit as a new one, and some topics that are also, of course, of interest of general innovation and not only community. So if you could say a few words more about like very general, why Bill Gates and what's different about this catalyst, and why it's so important to have it also as an opportunity. And as far as we know, it's just like launching calls now, so it's quite open already.
Yes, well, why Bill Gates? I don't know. I mean, it's he has been, of course, through his initiatives, he has been very visible in different initiatives. Actually, if you ask me about Bill Gates before I came to this meeting, I would rather think about different things we did with him on health, because we worked with him a lot, and also with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But this is separate, obviously, from Gates Ventures. So so these are separate organizations, but it's still him who is behind those. We sort of work with them on a number of initiatives linked to health, which of course health has become a very big issue, or a very big arena for us in recent years. I'm happy to say a word about that, because also we are very active in trying to develop vaccine production facilities in Africa. We already entered into one partnership in Senegal. We hope to achieve also another one in South Africa. And there's a number of similar initiatives also in Kenya, Rwanda, which I don't need to tell you how important it is for trying to find global solutions for the COVID crisis. But also in this context, I would say that it's not just the vaccines, but also the medicines, the treatment, testing possibilities. So there's in this area, Bill Gates has been working quite a lot with the EIB, and this is how we sort of came to this cooperation. But also, I think, obviously, he knew the EIB through the climate agenda, because he knew that EIB is the climate bank, and there was a lot being said about that among the financiers when we took the decision to become a climate bank. So we signed this partnership, and it's for 4 years. First projects are supposed to come already this year. It's for 4 years and to mobilize funding of up to $1 billion. And basically, it's to bridge that valley of death. So to be able to accelerate the deployment and the commercialization of technologies which have a big potential, recognized potential, to cut the greenhouse gas emissions. So this is the ultimate objective of technologies which for the moment are simply too expensive to be scaled up, and that can compete with existing fossil fuel based existing technologies. And the idea is, of course, again, to act as a catalyst. So it's not Bill Gates and the EIB who will finance 100%, but it's to attract other investors. And this is exactly, I think it's visible as such, that those two investors come in, and this hopefully will also allow the investments to happen. And of course, as you mentioned, this is linked to Horizon Europe. And what else can I say on this? Yes, I think that's more or less what I can say today. But it's very it's basically ready to be operationalized. It's not something that can be in the long run. It's really supposed to function over the next 3 years and a half.
Okay, thank you for this explanation. And now, as mentioned before, we'll go to chat. We received some questions from participants before the event, and they are also appearing on the chat, because I also see that there are some new ones also being put there. So let's go to them now. The first one, you can also see it on the screen now. It's related to taxonomy. And more specifically to gas projects. So if you could relate to that, if there's any changes in approach being considered at the moment as it comes to gas.
This is a kind of perfect occasion to use one of the old anecdotes. So when there was a conversation between Boris Yeltsin and John Major, who used to be then British Prime Minister, Our major went to Moscow and he asked Boris Yeltsin, so Boris, tell me about the situation. How is the situation in Russia? Tell me in one word. And Boris said, good. And Major replied, well, but maybe tell me a bit more, like in 2 words, not good. So basically, I could say the short answer to this question is no. But the more, let's say, developed answer would have to be, first of all, I'm not able to comment on a leaked document because we, of course, are also participating in the work of this platform, or what it's called, the Expert Group on Sustainable Finance. Actually, a colleague of ours is a rapporteur for this, for I think this issue or related issue. Basically, we are, of course, understand the different dimensions and aspects and the position of member states. So we watch that with interest. Let's see what will be the final outcome of the work, because there's also, I mean, everybody has been focused so much on the position taken by the 2 largest EU member states in this, what they want to gain, what they are to lose, France and Germany. But of course, this is not the full picture. You have 27 member states, plus you also have the European Parliament, which somehow has a role to play in this, although with all the difficulties that you can have with the delegated act and the procedure for its adoption. So I would be cautious here and say that simply we don't have any intention to change anything when it comes to gas. I can explain more what we can do when it comes to investments related to unabated such as fossil fuels. But I guess you know that situation. And on nuclear, we practically, there's politically also no room for maneuver to change anything, because our decisions, our projects are approved by the board of directors, where the 27 member states sit, plus the European Commission. And since 1990s, there was a kind of agreement not to, for the EIB not to finance any new nuclear energy projects. There's been only a few projects, but not in the last 10 years even, related to safety of nuclear installations. And that's it. So that's why my short answer at the beginning was the most precise one, but obviously I wanted to give you a fuller answer as well.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, that's not an easy subject. That's true. Okay, a second question we have here. It's related to commercialization of research, and it's quite detailed one. Since technology projects of higher risk are usually less, not bankable, how can the project teams increase the chances of financing? Is the advisory hub you're running a bit helpful? Could be helpful in this regard.
Yes, indeed. I think that the advisory hub is a good way to start. I had, of course, one, I would say, one caveat to mention, which is the fact that still the agreement on the InvestEU is not entirely agreed between the Commission and the EIB. So here there's still, let's say, a certain degree. Well, it's not a degree, but it's simply, it has to be done before we can look into using the InvestEU as a vehicle. But I would say, without being too theoretical here, I think the best way to approach it is simply to try to focus investors. I would not go into the different the long list of problems that exist, because I mentioned some of those on financing innovation, and I think this also we should not blur the picture too much, and I think it's better to focus on solutions. So when we focus on solutions, I think it's clear that you need usually to find a certain, let's say, investors with a differentiated profile, because you need, of course, an investor which can come in and help to establish credibility for the project. It could be a public institution, like in member states, it could be a national promotional bank, it could be a European investment fund, or it could be Bill Gates, not a public institution, but obviously this type of funds. Also, here I would mention that the EIF has supported a number of initiatives of various investors. I had a few examples here. Let me find it, because actually they are mostly investors from Northern Europe. There is a gentleman, Swedish gentleman, who has set up this company Klarna, which is quite popular in Sweden. I think it's a fintech. Basically, it's we have supported a number of investors, also help them a bit to publicize what they intend to do, to make sure that they can provide financing to the different to commercialization of projects, of research projects, which are not necessarily so easy. They find it so easy to be financed, and of course, so you need this type of initial investor, and then you also need hopefully an investor which has a very serious footing. Hopefully, we will see in Europe also more and more companies interested, banks and financial institutions interested to become such investors. If we could develop in the European Union a kind of risk sharing possibility for financial institutions to be able to share risk and to divide risk, that would also help us to establish, let's say, a group of investors who would be interested in this type of more risky research and commercialization of research. And I think, obviously, when it comes to sort of structuring the type of let's say the investment offer, a hub can be a good partner. That's the whole idea, and this is why in the InvestEU this has been very explicitly mentioned. I cannot find this text now in front of me, but I had it somewhere. On the role of the hub, it was actually very clearly mentioned that this is what they should be doing. So just to underline, you need at least two types of investors, and you have to find a good advisory to start on the path to commercialize the project.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I think we have two related to each other kind of follow-up questions. First one is on the screen now, so it's actually related to how to start, and the other one is actually very similar. So how can a deep tech Polish company or any company aiming at bridging the financial gap be helped by the bank or by the fund, and how to approach?
Can I come back to something? I found it.
Yeah. Okay.
I will tell you about those three investors, because I think it's actually interesting. So, in terms of the venture capital financing, actually, out of the 223 unicorns in Europe, 91 came into being in 2021. So it is very promising. Seems that the pandemic is very fertile ground for the unicorns. Now, I mentioned that you need to mobilize general investors, generalist funds, and so on. But now, in terms of building up this ecosystem of investors, and what we have been doing, those three entrepreneurs that we, for example, we helped them to set up investment funds. So we have, for example, Daniel Ek, who is the guy who created Spotify. And he has set up Prima Materia, an impact investing fund that focuses on European tech startups, set up with 1 billion from Daniel Ek himself. Then you have Niklas Adalbert, founder of Klarna. 100 million Tech for Good impact fund. Role models are drawing attention to Tech for Good. So he's using basically, influencers, as we would call them these days, to attract attention to that. Niklas Zenström, Atomico, he has indicated that he wants to work on the Baltic Sea. And so basically kind of environmental projects that would benefit Baltic Sea. Of course, in this context, just to mention that what you see, and this is something I mentioned in the beginning, is when you look at the map of Europe, there is a certain, let's say, privileged position of Northern Europe here when compared with other parts of Europe. So that is certainly not good. But on the other hand, of course, let's hope that with the rollout of the InvestEU, those type of differences we will all be also to bridge to some extent. Sorry, I stop here on this point.
Okay, thanks. But it's good to know that those three they are there. So I'm coming back to the question we have on the screen now, which, as I said, is a bit of a follow-up, I think, to the one before. In more practical terms, how to approach the bank or the fund in some organized manner.
Yeah, well, for the EIF, the best. I mean, we all live in 21st century, so the way you approach us is through the website. You go through the website, you click, and especially with the EIF, that's the best way to do it. For the EIB, you can also use the office that we have in Warsaw. We have an office. You can Google it easily, and they are able to help anybody and to direct you to the right company, to the right place, either in the EIB or EIF, quite easily. And of course, this is what happens every day. I mean, we are contacted by different companies. Even during Christmas, I had a big investor from Poland who contacted me. They were looking also for some money to commercialize research, and they found easily partners here in the EIB in the life sciences team. So it's basically either through the website or through the office in Warsaw.
Okay, thank you. It seems it's reachable then. Okay, and the next question is again going with a bit more detail to one of the sectors related this time with chemical recycling. So if you could comment on the future of this, maybe as a public-private partnership and some financing potentially available in the future.
Yes, I saw this question. I'm not obviously an expert on that, but what I have here in terms of an answer is not very precise, but it says that on the one hand, recycling and circular economy are obviously priority areas for us. And we have a number of relevant innovative instruments. So either it's a debt financing guarantees or equity, especially for innovative projects. Chemical recycling is promising, but still quite risky. So you would need to be very innovative, potentially look at the PPP model here. So I don't know if that is helpful at all, but it's not a clear no, but it's not a full yes, I would say. It would have to be convincing. It would have to be convincing, and the structure would have to be right. So, but of course, there's no harm in talking. So again, I encourage you to contact the EIB to look into this.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is a bit complex, and it's I think it could be basically summarized in a shorter version. What's your approach towards funding new airport hubs, or in general transport hubs? This is of course related to the planning of Poland of having a big transport hub for Warsaw. So if you could maybe comment on such projects, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, we have a new transport policy in place since I think middle of last year, and essentially what we can do at the moment, and this is also in line with climate bank roadmap. So we cannot invest in expansion of airport capacity. We can help modernize airports, including safety, security, modernization, and decarbonization. So, for example, I remember we just very recently we approved a project to help Kiev airport to be modernized and also to invest in safety, security, what's called the air controlling security of Kiev airport. But if you ask me about Baranovo, I think clearly there's no mandate for the EIB to finance this type of investments.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is also something I was wondering about. Is there any cooperation in place between European Innovation Council, European Innovation of Technology, or national agencies and EIF with regards to EIF with regards to possibility of increasing financing of a particular project and mobilizing additional investment?
Yes, the short answer is yes, but of course the devil is in the details. So if you have a specific project in mind, and if we are talking about investment projects, this is where the EIB or EIF can help with. Then it's best to talk to us, and we can potentially leverage on the instruments and the cooperation we have with the Commission or with the European Innovation Council to see whether we can help. Or you can, of course, access the national agency or fund, and then also ask them to check whether the EIB or EIF could co-finance. As always, not all the institutions that have to have a risk management, they all like to share risk. So there's always a tendency, and it's a normal tendency among financiers to share risk. So if it's a European level or national level, they can always merge forces. Within the European Union, it is quite easy because there is a certain, let's say, leeway when it comes to the risk assessment of different projects. So it's much easier. When you go outside the European Union, it becomes more complicated because you also need to use special risk arrangements or special guarantees, and that is expensive.
Okay, thanks a lot. But indeed, it's always better to use different options to speed up the development of the specific project or idea. Okay, the next question will be again some sector specific topic actually related. Is there any possibility for the EIB to support companies operating in hemp-related sector?
Yes, well, that is a tricky one. I understand that, where did I have this? I had this question somewhere. I understand that there is, in the EU legislation, there is such a thing as industrial cannabis. So it is possible to plant anywhere in the EU plants for industrial cannabis. In contrast to that, only 18 countries in the EU accept medical cannabis. Actually, those 18 countries include the UK, so it's less, it's 17 countries. And the national legislation and control mechanism are different in every country. There's simply no EU framework. So in some countries, it could be considered as illicit drug. So that implies that an evaluation, appraisal. So when you present a project, an appraisal of such a project would be quite complicated, and it would require special control mechanisms, special monitoring mechanism. So it would be probably difficult or even impossible if this is financed not directly through the EIB, but it would be financed through an intermediary, which is often the case, that we basically use the funds that we allocate to one of the financial institutions in the member state, and they on lend on our behalf to a company in that country. Well, here I don't think this would be acceptable. So it would imply essentially that it would have to be an operation financed directly by the EIB, and then it would also imply a very a pretty steep conditions also concerning the size of the operation. So I would say my advice for the time being, it doesn't look very likely.
Okay. Thank you.
Account of the procedure and so on, it doesn't look very promising. I'm not entering really into the discussion what could be the business value or let's say the policy value of this, but simply just to say that on the basis of the legal framework and the procedural conditions, it would be very difficult.
Okay, but the topic is there somehow. The challenge is there on the market, so the question also appeared. Thanks a lot. Now maybe still last one from my side. I came across also by EIB Institute. Could you say a few words about this institute? What's the role? What's the idea behind the EIB Institute?
Well, it's the institute is a very interesting body, I must say, because it is basically promoting our cooperation with the different initiatives, whether either in academic sector, in culture, social initiatives, or with the public in general. So, for example, the Institute signs on behalf of the EIB agreements with different universities and research centers, and we offer those institutions grants or sponsorships. We don't have at the moment any agreement in Poland. Those grants are worth 300,000 euro. We also have, for example, two chairs. EIB chairs. We have one on climate change policy and international carbon market in Florence, and then we have another one on European Chair for Sustainable Development at Sciences Po in Paris. The institute also organizes a summer school for graduate students to help them understand the EIB, how we operate. And they also organize lectures and events to explain to students or in different research institutions how the EIB operates. Then the institute also organizes every year a so-called social innovation tournament, which is basically the idea to promote social entrepreneurs from across Europe. We have 100 social entrepreneurs as members, as alumni of this community, but so far only one Polish-Spanish venture. There's always an award, I think 75,000 euro for the main prize every year. We also have regional innovation incubator, Northern Portugal, which is linked to this tournament for social investments. Then we also, through the institute, we give grants sometimes to disaster zones when there is some natural disaster, for example, in the EU or outside. We offer sometimes grants. We also, during COVID, we offered some grants to research communities. We offered, for example, 125,000 euro to the Fundacja Nauki Polskiej in 2020. And then the interesting part of the institute is also its activity in arts and culture, because we have, and this is not a very well-known fact about the EIB, but we have a very impressive arts collection, which has been built up over the decades. It has been here on exhibition in Brussels a couple of years ago when we had our 60th anniversary of the EIB. We also have some Polish artists there because it's modern arts. And we also have a residency and mentorship program in Luxembourg for promising young artists under 35. And we have recently 3 Polish artists as well who participated in this program. And then finally, we also have a program to protect the European cultural heritage. So basically, through an NGO which exists, it's called Europa Nostra, which is promoting the endangered cultural sites and monuments. We also help them to basically find financing to restore them, to protect them. Interestingly, in 2020, one of the sites that was on this list for 2020 was Sząbierki Power Plant in Bytom. I mostly associate Sząbierki with a football club, but this is obviously also considered now an architectural gem of the European industrial past. So this is what the institute is doing. It's quite unusual, I would say, for the European institution.
Exactly. This is very, very interesting, actually, and intriguing, rather, I should say, because this is really not something you would have in mind when you hear European Investment Bank, even if there's an institute added to this. So it's very, very, very good to know now about that, and we will also probably spread the news. So thanks a lot. Time's up. 1 hour passed just like that with so many different topics. It's not a surprise that time is running fast. So again, thank you very much for being with us, for accepting the invitation. We are very happy that we could discuss this topic with you. And in case of any follow-up questions, now I'm talking mostly to the audience, you can always contact us and we will come back to you as soon as possible. And for now, yeah, thank you very much. And I hope to see you at our next Brussels Talks event. This is already confirmed. We will talk to European Research Council President, Professor Maria Leptin, on the 9th of February. Still not yet published anywhere, but news will come, so you are the first ones to find out about that. And we will continue also in the following months with our series of events. And yeah, have a nice afternoon still, and see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.